The first season of Supergirl premiered October 26, 2015 on CBS. Set in a different universe within the Arrow multiverse, Supergirl was not beholden to changes on the other shows. This gave Adler, Kreisberg, and Berlanti a lot of freedom, pretty much crafting their own universe from the comics up. Supergirl was to be a Case of the Week show with a serialized arc, and Superman was to be a presence without physically appearing. The show cost $3 million an episode to broadcast, a pretty expensive number, and would have multiple directors throughout the season. Let's talk casting. Melissa Benoist was cast as Supergirl, and she's actually a decent Supergirl. For all of the complaints I have for this show, as Supergirl herself, Benoist does a good job. This is especially apparent when she crosses over to other shows, away from the arcs that plague her own show, but she's reminiscent of pre-crisis adult Supergirl, which is nice. We don't have to deal with the overly angsty post-crisis Supergirl or the overly angry New 52 Supergirl, but someone that can strike a balance between cheerful and mature. Cast alongside her was Mehcad Brooks as James Olsen. He's fine in the role he's meant to play, but it's not really Jimmy Olsen. Now, this has nothing to do with his race. My favorite Jimmy Olsen is Justin Whalens, and he looks nothing like the Jimmy from the comics either, and is biracial. No, it's just that Jimmy is perennially a kind of guy that gets himself into sticky situations, but has to find ways out of them. He's a little dorky, a little awkward with women, but he's also highly competent at his job and a great friend. Those last two definitely apply to Brooks's Olsen. James is classy, to say the least, and he's almost too perfect. He's intelligent, organized, and professional, successful with women, and an investigative reporter, whereas Jimmy is usually forced to think on his toes, is socially awkward, and is proud to be a photographer. Bizarrely enough, there is a character from the comics that Brooks's Olsen resembles better, one that's classy, an investigative reporter tied to Lucy Lane like this Olsen is, and is generally composed and focused. Ron Troop. I almost wonder if Brooks's part was written to be Ron Troop, but it was changed to include a more recognizable name. Still, while he's not like Jimmy from the comics, Brooks does well as the romantic lead of this show. The other romantic, I guess, lead is Jeremy Jordan as Win Shot. He was created for the show, so there's nothing to compare him to, but he's insufferable. We'll get to why that is later. Shyler Leigh was cast as Alex Danvers, an original character, being Kara's adoptive sister. She's okay. Then there's David Harewood as Hank Henshaw. Sort of. I loved Harewood in Robin Hood, so I was excited to see him in this. And he's actually pretty good, and we'll talk about why that is later. Lastly, Callista Flockhart as Cat Grant. Cat Grant is a cool character from the comics. A single mother, a sex-positive feminist, well before that was a popular thing for comics to do. She's super funny, and she's proud of her job at the Daily Planet, so I was curious to see what they do with an aged-up version. Well, let's begin. 24 years ago, Kara Zor-El's planet, Krypton, was in serious peril. Her cousin, Kal-El, was sent to Earth for his own safety and protection. You may know his story. The story that you don't know is that she was sent to protect him. Well, actually, you may know that. That's in the pilot. Anyways, Kara is adopted by the Danvers, played by Dean Cain and Helen Slater, known for playing Superman and Supergirl respectively. That's cute. Anyways, she grows up in a relatively normal life alongside Alex, her sister that ended up working secretly for the Department of Extra-Normal Operations, while Kara Danvers has gone into journalism, almost, as an assistant to the media mogul Cat Grant. Grant, rather than being vibrant and emotionally intelligent, is basically Meryl Streep's character from The Devil Wears Prada. She's rude, manipulative, abusive, and the show justifies her. She repeatedly refers to Kara by the wrong name, an abusive tactic, and she regularly belittles her employees. We'll get into this more, but her position as a billionaire is also seen as morally correct, regardless of how she uses her power, because she faced discrimination to get to this point. But it's hard to stay mad at Grant because, while at least a couple of her lines land, the same can't be said for Win, the nice guy, trademark, that really wants to date Kara. He asks her out, and it's implied not for the first time, so he can't take subtle no's for answers. He tells Kara that she can't find love looking for it the way that she does, and when he finally realizes that she doesn't like him like that, he concludes it's because she's a lesbian. Right? Because if a woman doesn't want to go out with you, it must be because she doesn't want to go out with any man. I hope you like lesbian jokes, because that's the only representation we'll be getting this season. Hank Henshaw is not yet decent. Harewood plays the character we've all seen before, thinly veiled misogynist black man in authority that needs to be proven wrong by the strong white woman. It's not as bad as all of that, I suppose, since it's revealed that this is mostly an act, but we'll get to that later. Lastly, I want to talk about the show's resolution to use the moniker Supergirl, explained in-universe by Kat viewing the title, Girl, as empowering, and this is meant to shut up Kara, who would prefer to be called Superwoman. Look, I recognize that, out of universe, the reason is because Supergirl is a famous marketable character, and Superwoman isn't. But every Supergirl from the comics adopts this name while still an actual girl, not an adult like Kara. Furthermore, while should one choose to identify as a girl into adulthood, more power to them, just because something is empowering for one doesn't mean it's empowering for all. If Kat wants to call herself a girl, great for her, I guess, but many women are adamant that they are no longer children, and calling them girls only infantilizes them. But the pilot has some good, like Kara electing to save people, and James, like I said, is a charming romantic lead. Also, the costume design on Supergirl is really good, and the cape being the blanket that Clark came to Earth in is also a nice touch. Oh, and yeah, there's the lead villain, but that's really boring. The second episode is where we really see the first season's serial nature. Kara has to round up criminals that have escaped Fort Roz, a prison in the Phantom Zone. Ignoring that the Phantom Zone has, in recent years, been used as an allegory for Guantanamo Bay and unlawful, indefinite imprisonment, safe assured these criminals never face trials, never receive lawyers, and, you guessed it, the heroes are never questioned for doing this. Although, not all of them are imprisoned, lots of them are just killed. This episode also has Grant threatening to fire Olsen within 24 hours if he can't get an interview with Supergirl, something seemingly impossible if he doesn't know who Supergirl was already. She later says that she's firing him anyway before the 24 hours are up, because I guess that's funny. We also meet Maxwell Lord, loosely based on the comic character of the same name, whose character can best be described as a smarmy dirtbag. I'm really not going to talk about him much because he doesn't really warrant talking about. Episode 3 has the first, almost interesting villain of the week with Reactron, a nuclear-based villain that just wants a normal life. This episode also gives the first appearance of Superman, sort of, as he has to save Supergirl, but then they have a nice online chat where he encourages her. This is another one of those really nice things. Less nice is how Kara responds to James's ex-fiancée, Lucy Lane, appearing. That is, she reacts poorly. Up to this point, James hasn't been explicitly romantic with Kara, and this reaction only makes sense if he had, while still seeing Lucy, which he also wasn't. And this isn't portrayed as Kara's character flaw. If it was, that would be fine, but instead James is implied to have acted inappropriately by having a past relationship before kind of flirting with Kara. This immediate framing of Kara and Lucy as rivals for a man before they've even met each other feels counterintuitive to the show's premise. Episode 5 was supposed to be Episode 4, but they were flipped in response to the Paris attacks. Lucy and James get back together, while Kara laments that she's been stuck in the friend zone. Hey, maybe she and Wynn browse the same websites. Next, we have Livewire, but before we get into that, let's talk about Superman the Animated Series. Livewire, in that show, was introduced not just as a villain to Superman, but as a foil to Lois. Lois won almost every exchange, and this is interrupted by Leslie Willis, a shock jock whose vulgarity and negativity astound Lois to the point of silence. This attitude also proves to affect Superman, as she blames him for her powers, with him having no true counter-argument. In Supergirl, though, there isn't a moment where Cat Grant isn't in command. She is disgusted by Willis, rightfully so, also add another lesbian joke to the counter, but she's never called out or shown up by her. She's already kind of the Livewire of the show, so instead Willis is just vulgar to the point of homophobia rather than picking people apart by correctly identifying their insecurities. Still, this episode does have some nice flashback sequences, so it's not a total waste, even though we get Wynn creepily kissing Kara on the cheek. Episode 6 assassinates one of my favorite characters, Red Tornado, but that's honestly minor. The episode deals with Kara's anger, and honestly some of it is anger that should be dealt with. But most of it is other people acting like jerks and her responding surprisingly well. Eventually, she lashes out at Kat, and it's supposed to be seen as this breakdown that she should feel horrible about, but she's honestly finally sticking up for herself. Within this episode alone, Kat has gaslit her, yelled at her, held unreasonable expectations, and insinuated that her friendship with James is only a pretense for sleeping with him. Kat gives what is supposed to be an emotional speech about how her old boss Perry White could throw chairs and nobody cared, but as a woman she couldn't throw a tissue without being seen as overly emotional. This point, which could potentially be salient, would be made much better by someone that didn't regularly abuse and demean her employees, and no matter how angry various versions of Perry White got, he would never imply anything about an employee's sex life. Kara is justifiably angry in this episode, but it still feels a need to make her apologize to the woman that's been harassing her the whole show. Episode 7 is a depowered hero episode, with some nice stuff like Kara talking to Robert down, and it also has James and Kara sharing a tender moment and hugging, which is something that friends do. However, Wynn sees this as an opportunity to tell Kara that she'll never find love and that he's disappointed in her. He's still her friend after this, by the way. This episode also reveals that Hank is Jean Jones, better known as the Martian Manhunter. This is pretty great, as it explains why the character seems so rude while still allowing him to grow. He has had to maintain a character to avoid being caught, and is actually a friend of Jeremiah Danvers. Most of the stuff that I bring up with Hank in this episode will be touched upon later in the show. Episode 8 reveals the main villain is an eco-terrorist, which is not the most original idea. It also includes a subplot with Kat calling one of her board members out for his white privilege. Like, she knows she's white, right? She knows she's benefited from white privilege, right? Oh, who am I kidding? Episode 9 is nothing special. Episode 10 has Wynn kiss Kara, which she is clearly uncomfortable with. And though he does apologize, which I guess is something, Kara still says that she feels guilty, when she really shouldn't. Notice a trend yet? Episode 11 has Kara asked out by Kat's son, and some decent stuff with Jean. Episode 12 is the Bizarro episode, and Bizarro is actually handled really well on this show. Nicely done. Episode 13 is the obligate for the Man Who Has Everything episode, which is really too early in the series. Justice League's adaptation of the story came after 8 years of character development for Clark, and the original story came after decades. We barely know this Supergirl in comparison. Also, the main villain dies. Whatever, like I said, the stuff with the main villain is boring. Episode 14 sees James express distaste for the DEO's skirting of justice. But don't worry, this only means that they free the man that owned a slave, not the woman that he enslaved. She can remain comatose and imprisoned. Episode 15 includes former Supergirl Laura Vandervoort as Brainiac 8, which is cool. Also, Kat is abusive to a new employee. Episode 16 is the Red Kryptonite episode, nothing special. Episode 17 really ups the ante on Earth's supposed alien discrimination, which I'll get into a lot more in Season 4. Small note, but they take a really cool Jack Kirby creation and turn him into a one-note xenophobe, which, as a big Jack Kirby fan, I don't care for. Episode 18 is the best episode of the season, and perhaps the show, as it contains The Flash, who is great. Still, it also has that employee that Kat had been bullying, gaining powers, and seeking revenge, and also one of the worst self-congratulatory lines in the whole show. Kat sees Kara, Barry, Wynn, and James, and describes them as like the attractive yet non-threatening racially diverse cast of a CW show, end quote. This is what Supergirl showrunners thinks is diverse. 2 white men, a white woman, and a black man. This is why it'll be 3 years before they add a woman of color to the character roster. Literally every other show in the Arrowverse is more diverse than Supergirl, and they still couldn't help but pat their own backs. Still, this episode isn't horrible. Kara and James finally kiss after a season of will they won't they, until the entire city enters into a trance made by the bad guys. Episode 19 and 20 are just more boring main villain things, though it ends with Kat inspiring Supergirl to save the world, Kat choosing to finally be nicer to Kara by giving her a promotion and finally calling her by her name, and Kara ending up with James. So, why did I go through a recap of all of that? Well, because I wanted to illuminate the arc of the show that I saw. At the beginning, Kat is abusive to Kara, but she stays subservient. When she tries to break out from this, she is reprimanded both by the show and the show's characters, and she quickly returns to her usual submissive self. Eventually, after a year's worth of harassment, though, Kat begins to treat Kara as a person. Not as a friend, not with favors, but by seeing her as a person. And this is portrayed as how things should be. If you want to be treated as a person by your boss, you have to earn it. When I brought this arc up to fans of the show, I was told I was overthinking things. That's not the message of the show, it's just used for laughs. But, as in 2017, showrunner Andrew Kreisberg has had many past employees go public with their stories of him abusing and harassing them. With this in mind, it's hard to see a case of a character needing to grin and bear poison to get ahead in her career as a silly joke. If your boss demeans you, or insults you, or makes reference to your sexuality repeatedly after you've asked them to stop, they don't deserve your patience. They don't deserve your obedience. Go to HR, go to their superior, go to their spouse, or to a lawyer, or to the press. But don't put your head down and power through until they finally accept you as a human being, because, as we see in Season 2, they'll just move on to abuse their next target. There's a lot I could talk about at length with this season. Wynn's nice guy arc, the DEO's totalitarianism, the show's overwhelming whiteness, but those things I can address in later seasons. This was, mercifully, the only season to feature Cat Grant as a main character, and I needed to address how her abuse is excused by the writers, as well as the fans. As many of you may recall, Kara and James was seen by many fans as an inferior ship to Kara and Cat. Abuse isn't funny, or cute, or romantic, but worse is that it is rarely spoken of as abuse. If your boss treats you like Cat treats Kara, please find help, and know that their treatment of you comes not from anything you've done to deserve it, but their own weakness of character. Stay strong, and remember that there are others that understand your pain. Well, that's my main problem with Season 1, which was honestly probably the best season. Criticism of Supergirl will return, though, so if you're interested, look out for that. Thanks.